community. Other than that, that's all we do. I'm an advocate.
Oh, all you do so much. We adore you. You're incredible and such an inspiration for us
Thank
all
you.
too. So I can't wait to meet you in person someday.
This is close enough, right? This is good though.
Hey, this is
Yeah.
forcing us a little closer.
In case anyone else is listening, those of us in Illinois haven't really met anyone outside of Illinois that's on the screen. So this is our first time actually seeing each other.
And really, it wasn't until this year that a lot of us met here in Illinois.
Mm-hmm. At the signing, I met you.
Yeah.
Wow. And I just thought you were all sitting together somewhere.
No. You'd be amazed when you're walking through the Capitol. Well, you guys know when you go to Washington or your state capitals, it's very easy to pass people for years and never meet them until we have a gathering, right? And then we're like, oh yeah, you were doing that? No, you were doing that. No, we were doing that. So yeah.
Wow.
Hundreds of people that you never even meet.
Well, I'm Penelope. I'm one of the few over in New York. I'm a patient advocate and do grassroots lobbying, try to learn all I can from these Illinois folks who are ahead of us. I do cannabis education. I'm a master certified health and wellness coach, and just working over in that, trying to grow our New York community and reach out as much as we can. So that's who I am.
Should I go next?
Yeah,
I'm
sure.
Nikki.
You sure can.
All right. Hi, I'm Nikki Lawley. I'm in Buffalo, New York. I have learned about cannabis and become a patient because of a traumatic brain injury about 3.5 years ago. I'm a nurse by trade, but not a true cannabis nurse at this point because I'm not practicing nursing right now. I spend a lot of time in Canada to get my medicine because New York State, as the panelists are aware, I'm sure, we don't have any full flower medicine. We must use tinctures, oils, and vapes at a 5% strength. That basically sucks. It's not whole plants, it's not full spectrum. It's very frustrating as a patient to have the ability of having quality of life in another country or another state that's legal, but in my home state, we don't have access to flower. So I love the new journey. I'm in a weird way grateful for the brain injury because it's really helped me meet some amazing individuals in the community. My focus is brain injury, Alzheimer's, and CTE, basically, trying to help those communities and educate on cannabis.
Hi, everybody. I'm Kirsten Velasco. I've been hanging out with these guys virtually for a long time. And even though we've only seen each other in person, you know, a handful of times, we feel like a really tight-knit group because we've just stuck with it for so long, thanks to Abe. And I've been doing outreach in the real world and doing education. And so where Penelope has been focused on the lobbying, like Sandy has, I've been more just directly out connecting with community and giving education programs. And now that we've hit this new phase of our lives, it's just like everything else I've experienced in cannabis where it's like, well, I've learned that, now I'm gonna learn another thing. And now I can remember thinking, oh God, I'm gonna have to learn how to do MailChimp. So now that we're on to digital community activity, it's just like, this is happening, grab a hold of it, you've got to do this. So thanks to you guys, I'm taking another leap and learning a new thing, and I look forward to creating a ton of really informative and entertaining content. I think it's just gonna be a fun time. I'm starting to get really excited about it. And that's me, I'm Kirsten. Nice to meet you all.
I'll follow up. I'm the newest to the group. I'm Andrew Behringer. I have met Penelope advocating up in Albany, New York, and we are here in New York fighting for legislation one day at a time. You know, hopefully we'll talk about that today. is, you know, what the current status is, hopefully medical expansion, which is a #1 priority, and, you know, just fighting for what is needed in this industry, and while we all hold on to the seat, you know, our teeth. And I really appreciate letting you guys join me, the group, and be, you know, part of it. And it's going to be a lot of fun.
Welcome, Andrew. I guess I'll follow up with that. My name is Illinois. I'm also a patient and a caregiver. I've been a patient for a long time. I've worked in the industry inside a dispensary setting, seeing all walks of life come in there. And it's just been incredible learning about this plant and how it helps everybody from young children to our grandmas and grandpas, and just seeing this plant give people life again, over and over again. So my specialty is graphic arts. I'm an artist by trade, and I make things look pretty. So yeah, that's me.
Nice hat.
My name's Susan Bastress, and this is Peter Berenger. We're Andrew's parents. We're invited today by Andrew, so thank you for allowing us. This may be the only session because we aren't advocates. Like
But
Andrew
you
is.
are, what are you?
But we're
No, but-
certified by the Maryland Medical Cannabis
There
Commission.
you go. And
And-
your medical patients.
And our dispensaries are an essential service, so they're all open, along with, you know, CVS and the grocery stores. But that's, Maryland is, I think, pretty progressive, at least from our point of view. It's not as progressive as Illinois or Colorado, but it's, you know, doable right now for us. We're learning a lot. It's been a journey to learn more about tinctures and CBD and what these products can do for us. So we really appreciate this call. Thanks. We're on the Chesapeake Bay.
Yeah, and Susan, you said you're not an advocate, but I mean, you said you're a patient, and so that makes you an advocate. You did what so many people are afraid to do, because they're afraid to get high, and that's not what happens, because when you're in pain, I mean, it's just like any other pharmaceutical, is that it relieves the pain so that you can function, and you're not getting high, you're getting well. So you're an advocate.
That's
Hey, Rue, ask her how many people she signed up for the program so far.
a lot of people in my age group, and, you know, the boomers. Remember marijuana, of course, from our college days, and this intervening few decades where it's been illegal, they've checked out and haven't really come up to speed on all there is to know now and all the medicinal advantages of using it. So I've been trying to educate my boomer friends and peers to the advantages of this, and they're slowly now signing up. I think there's a reluctance to get licensed by the state. There's all sorts of anxieties about that. But I'm doing my best to advocate that they should. So that's what I'm doing.
You are awesome.
Okay, and is that everybody? Andrea?
I'll go next. Or
Andrea, go ahead. Go ahead, Andrea.
I'm Andrea. I'm also known as Rafaela. I work under the name Rafaela. I professionally reunite adoptees and find long lost relatives for people. But I have gone back to school to study cannabis. And a lot of this on my own. I have some relatives in Israel who are working in the cannabis field, and working with them and learning from them. Very good at university here. And I'm involved with the local community here, which has been very eye-opening. And I have found it very helpful to be part of a community.
Thank you for joining us, Andrea. Hey, Jordan, we need to hear from you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jordan. I think most of you know me. I'm a patient in Illinois. I'm also on the board of Chicago Normal. I've been a political advocate. I've worked on a lot of stuff with Sandy politically, and I just enjoy politics, so that's my expertise, and that's where I tend to spend most of my time.
And aren't you a board member of Chicago Normal too?
Yeah, I said that.
Oh, I'm sorry, I missed it.
Did I break up?
Maybe, I don't know. Sorry.
Yes, I'm a board member of Chicago Normal. I'm on the legislative team. We're actually working on a project currently that we did last election, Smoke the Vote. Which you can find at smoke.normal, NORML.org. And it's like most special interest groups, we create a report card of all our legislators so you know where they stand on the issue. So the example I usually come up with is the NRA does a report card where they would, on an A to F scale, grade each candidate based on how they vote on gun issues. For Normal, obviously, it's going to be on cannabis issues.
I think we have the same thing in New York. We probably have a lot of Normal members here and board members too. So
Yeah, it's a national initiative.
all right. Abraham, you need to introduce yourself.
Wonderful. My name is Abraham. We started the medical cannabis community about 5 years ago, and I've had the pleasure of being able to work with all of our lovely team members to really bring everything together. Well, we've been on the face of trying to expand our groups into multiple states. We've had the fortunate ability to have people who support our mission join us and be a part of our team and really help progress this move forward. We have a lot of experts on our team, as you can see. Collectively, I think we have up to 12 or 15 people now who help us operate the medical cannabis community, and we've been fortunate enough to be able to continue expanding our goals for awareness, education, and access, not only in Illinois, Maryland, Pennsylvania, and New York, now going into other states as we start to grow our brand and our presence and overall the different types of products and services that we're starting to launch into the market in order to become sustainable and allow us to continue building a larger impact in our communities. My background has been in marketing and advertising, which has allowed us to determine what the best strategy is to connect with a lot of consumers and patients. And overall, in the next couple of years, our goal is to try and get to a point where we can become sustainable so that our team can pretty much start to do this full time. And so as the pandemic has forced us all to start going inside, we decided that it was the perfect time for the community to start to get to know us better rather than just via text messages and comments. And by providing people the opportunity to see us in person and live, they can get to know us better so that we can continue building and facilitating those relationships that we've worked to nurture over the last 5 or 6 years now. So I appreciate all of you taking the time to join us on the call. I appreciate you bearing with all of our tech issues as we figured out how to work Zoom and get everything running. But I hope that this is the first of many calls and meetings and hangouts that we'll be able to do in order to start getting more people in our community actively involved. And hopefully when the pandemic is over, we'll be able to start seeing a lot more of you in real life. So thank you guys for coming. And I'll let Penelope segue us into our next.
Can I just say one thing? Can we all put our microphones on mute if we're not talking because there's a lot of feedback?
Sorry about that.
Perfect. Beautiful.
Is that better?
Think we got them all.
That's good? Okay. Yeah.
Yes. Well, I think we have all of our team has been introduced, and thank you for tuning in with us. This is exciting for us. It's our first time doing this. So we really, one thing I always forget to mention too is I am a patient, and I think that goes for most of us. I mean, all of us, I think, on this team we are patients as well, so we do understand. And we would like to know how you are all doing. Let us know in the chat, reach out to us. And we're peeking in on here too, and we're reading and on Facebook to see how you are. And if you have any questions, type them in there. And we're just wondering how you are coping with everything. How are you doing? This is a really uncharted time for all of us. It can be very scary. And we're just wondering how you are handling, how you are coping. Any observations that you're noticing, and in the group, let us know the best you can here. I know for me, I have tried to keep busy. That's been my coping. What about you guys?
I can jump in real quick and talk about trying to keep busy and try to keep the light out. Can you hear me? Give me a thumbs up.
Yes.
Okay. The little things, here in New York City and Queens, life is a little different than normal, I would say. People have to really change their lives a little differently in their day-to-day. I am very close to a lot of the hospitals. They're certainly getting overwhelmed right now, but I just try to keep that out of sight, out of mind. The one thing that would be really great is having flower here in New York for that, and of course the ability to home grow. I think right now in the ability and time of quarantine, it really shines a light in that area. And I'm pretty sure almost everybody is agreeing with me right now is, in that aspect. And just FYI for everybody that is listening, in New York, they want us to only allow us to grow up to 3 plants if the legislation did pass this year. And you would have to be a medical patient with a card to do that. But back to keeping busy, hobbies, lots of hobbies.
Yes. Days have been nothing but yard work. Lots of manual labor, and then growing for us here in Illinois as well. Starting January 1st, patients were legally allowed to grow. So I've been tending to my garden, my beautiful little family, growing, and it's been very therapeutic and learning experience. And then just being a caregiver also as well, and struggling to keep in order, anytime we actually have to go out for supplies, trying to remember every little thing to prevent from exposing yourself. So that's been frustrating.
I can relate to that, Rue. And I see a couple of our members are talking about how they feel that isolation. And as caregivers, I think we feel it probably not more, but pretty intense, because we're responsible if we bring anything back to our patients and Jim. And so every time I go out, I am in a panic mode, because then my calendar literally starts every 14 days when I go out. So it's not tomorrow, it's what's going to happen in the next 14 days. So that's scary in itself for any of us that have a condition. I have migraines, I'm a patient too, but I don't have, that's not a chronic life-threatening condition that some people have. So yeah, I can't even tell you the guilt I feel thinking I might bring home this virus or anything to Jim, and if he died, I would ultimately be responsible. So I get it. And as far as isolation, I've been keeping busy with the dogs, doing agility training. I've cleaned till I can't clean anymore. And then I've also gotten lazy where I'll be like, oh, I've got 14 more days to do this, so I just won't do it, right? So we feel you. And if there's any ideas you guys think that we can come up with to do on the page, that would be wonderful. So get those creative juices flowing. I've thought about maybe going back to painting, stuff like that. And I just, we'll see.
I just want to send a quick shout out to all the people that have joined us so far. It looks like we got anywhere from 18 to 30 people in there. We've got everyone from Cole to Anna, Phil, Mike, John, Michelle, Julianne, Elena, Rusty, and Haley so far as participants. So thank you guys so much for joining us. I'm reading through all the comments done across all of our channels, and I see people chiming in, so it's pretty cool to see the active participation. I'm glad that you're doing really well and that you're making edibles, Cole. That is super cool to hear. I'd be curious to learn what types of edibles you're making and what your process looks like.
Who are we at here?
I'm continuing to invite more people over to our session, but I'm reading through some of the comments thus far. In Illinois, New York, or Pennsylvania, do we have any other updates to share with our community members?
Well, for New York, I think probably the news headlines you've all caught on that our budget was to be passed on April 1st, and that was our deadline. And in it, we did have a proposal for legalizing cannabis, marijuana, and that did get removed. So we're not, then there was talk that maybe we would work on it, the legislation still in 2020, another time, who knows what's going to happen. And it was not going real great anyways. You know, as far as medical patients, it was not a medical bill. So there were not a whole lot of improvements for the medical program in that. We were trying to get what we could, and there was some things written in for patients, but it was, you know, it was for adult use legalization. It was a bill that was primarily written for marijuana justice and taking care of issues that are very, very important. But it's we have a lot of work to do, and Andrew's over there in New York City end, and he's with Normal there too, and I'm in the Western New York end, and so is Nikki, and we have a lot of work to do, and we're going to have to work on probably a separate bill just written for medical patients. So onward we go. And I don't know what's happening over in Illinois, guys.
Can I add a little note to that?
Yeah.
Greatly said, perfectly said. Here in New York, I think actually, I'm pretty sure you'll agree that it's actually good that the legislation maybe didn't pass in the budget because of certain legislation that needed to be critiqued, especially with home grow and other, you know, taxation, which, you know, was extraordinarily high. I don't want to put a number out there, but it was let's just say in between 40 and 50%. And that was, you know, that's not how it needs to be. And that's how it, you know, that's how you drive towards the illicit market. And that's how you destroy an industry before it's even started. So, you know, like you said, a lot of work to do. A lot of work.
Here's a question that I've got for all of you. How are you changing your consumption habits with the corona pandemic? Are you purchasing less? Have you stopped consuming smokable products, or is it business as usual on your end? And that's for all of you, not everybody all at once.
Well, I'll speak for Jim. He's still smoking. He's an old school user, and I brought that to his attention that perhaps he shouldn't be consuming smoking, but that's his go-to, and he gets relief quicker from that. As a caregiver, I would say that if you can refrain from using the rolled joints or whatever, that would be my best advice to most people. Look towards a dry herb vape or edibles or something like that. We've been in contact with several doctors in North Shore that are putting together a letter regarding this. They understand that cannabis has its benefits, of course, but because this is a lung virus, they're taking every precaution possible.
Yeah, no, I'm still combusting but I like to utilize every, delivery method. And same with my patient is not just switching to edibles isn't going to give you the same relief as if you were to use a vape pen or smoke a joint or whatnot. I switched to an herbal vaporizer for an entire year, and I got back to the point to where I couldn't fall asleep, and then I went back to Old Faithful, and that combustion, because at 450 degrees, you get that most sedating effect possible. And, just for those that are seeking other cannabinoids from their flower, here in Illinois, they've done a pretty good job about putting the cannabinoids on there. So if you're really looking to get the most out of your medicine, that's when the herbal vaporizer comes into play, because you can start at a low temperature and slow up, because cannabinoids like CBG are more prominent at like the 340 degree temperature, something like that. But lower temperatures if you want to have access to your other cannabinoids other than THC. Otherwise, yeah, it's just business as normal over here. Just being mindful not to share myself.
Here's a question that came in from Susan. She asked if there is a recommended use of cannabis products for immune deficiency related to alopecia. Does anybody have insights on that?
I do not on that specific disorder.
All right, so it looks like with alopecia, we might have to do a blog article and some research to find that out, understand, and be able to dig into that further. Nikki, have you ever heard anything related to this?
I've heard very little, but I have heard obviously strains higher in CBD tend to relieve any of the alopecia type scenarios, but I am not an expert, nor have I really heard about dosing or what products to use.
I can't speak for alopecia, but I can speak for immune problems. I do not have an immune system, and so I use a lot of CBG.
Andrea, can you move the microphone a little closer?
I don't know what it is with my microphone. Can you hear me better now?
I heard you say that you utilize CBG.
I utilize CBG because I do not have an immune system. I'm like the boy in the bubble. And so I use CBG to try to build up my immune system.
So I heard you mention earlier you use a lot of RSO oils, which I assume that makes it a lot easier to find CBG.
Well, I buy CBG hemp and make oils out of that for my immune system. Whether that will help with alopecia or not, I can't say. But if she wants to build up her immune system, that's what I would suggest.
Thank you.
I don't know if you can hear me.
Somebody else, Elena from Maryland, said that she's looking for a new dry vaporizer. Does anybody have recommendations on what you're using, what you like, or what you might have heard works for others?
Airizer. If you're stuck at home and you don't need to bring it on the go, Airizer.
Yeah, that's been my go-to is the Airizer. I love it because it works like a volcano. You can have a balloon to it if you want, and then it hose, and it's been great. I have been able to get longer sessions out of it, or smaller, depending on what my needs are, and it's been pet friendly in my experience. Having dogs and cats jumping around sometimes is scary around such expensive equipment. This was also very nicely priced. They have a $150 model, and then they have a $250 model, and then that one has like a remote control, has a built-in fan. The fan's great because then you don't have to use as big of an inhalation to get the vapor through the hose. So that's been very nice.
If you paid $250 for that, you paid too much.
If you're getting it from the manufacturer, yes, it's $250. I very much bartered for mine.
I would say
that was no issue for me, but
yeah, I would say AirRiser's biggest pull is its price point. I don't know of any quality vaporizer that's that cheap. Otherwise, Onsen Labs, if you're looking for something that's high quality and you have a little more money to spend, has created one of the smoothest vaporizers, dryer vaporizers I've ever used.
Yeah, I have that one on its way now. So I'm excited to finally have it at home and use that one for sure. Yeah, that one right there. He was, his device is great because he designed it with the patient in mind. Because there's so many things that we're not thinking about when we're consuming when it's related to someone that has a lot of health issues. Like there's the PAX portable device, and I didn't like that one for various reasons. And one of the ones that got brought to my attention was that you use it the way you turn it on is by pressing your thumb on the mouthpiece, and then you put the piece to your mouth. And then if you're having a session with more than one people, then that's why you always have to make sure to wash your hands when you do anything. That's you don't want to be putting that device in your mouth when you don't know where your hands have been. So yeah, as far as portable devices, that one's been a very popular one amongst patients for sure, but not my favorite portable device. I always have one that's portable, and then
Abe, I just wanted to volunteer. Oh, what was that?
No, Nikki was asking about what vaporizer we were talking about, and that was the Arizer, Arise. Yeah.
I just wanted to volunteer in New York to try the Onsen Lab one. That's on my wish list forever. I've been wanting to write him. I have the bag.
You can send two.
Yeah, I have the bag that's the smell-proof bag from this company, and it's amazing because it has the locks on it, and so I think I need to get the tabletop version to go with that as an immunocompromised patient. So
I'm going to go to a question that one of the community member has, but yeah, with the Onsen Labs is the issue with things like the volcano and the riser is that the heating element is enclosed in a plastic container or has a metal covering, and when you're reaching a certain temperature, you are getting those toxins that are around it that you're also inhaling with your vapor. So depending on the severity of your condition, you really have to be mindful about every little tiny thing that you do, which is why it's important that we have dispensaries where we know things are properly packaged, and we know it is what it is. I don't have to trust somebody. I can trust my friend, but do I trust my friend's friend or his friend's friend? So we got a question here from Don. It says, how do you feel about those in the trenches, so to speak, working to physically help those who need these products, yet considered underground to avoid regulations and tax-induced price gouging in order to make the cost more reasonable? I don't know if anybody has any insight on that. If that made any sense. I'm having
Is it the question, maybe the front lines talking about the illicit market, people still, offering medicine to people who may or may not want to or have the ability to go towards a medical dispensary or a recreational one? I think that may have been the angle of the question.
If I'm interpreting it that way, it sounds like that's the question. And in short, if I had to rephrase it, the question would be, how do we feel about people who continue to sell cannabis to consumers outside of a dispensary facility in the free market? And to that, for us as a team, what I could say is we always recommend people to go through the legal route, simply because you're able to obtain access to products that have been tested and verified by an independent third-party lab to ensure that the products are safe. But at the heart of the conversation, we understand that many people aren't able to afford the products in dispensaries, and they're not able to afford the fees associated with obtaining a medical card. And so for us, safety is pretty much the most important factor for our patients, both from a medical and a legal standpoint. And we understand that people need to do what they need to do in order to be able to survive. And we ourselves, we're not police, we're not the enforcement. We understand people's situation, but if they have the option and the ability to go through the legal route, well, the cost is absolutely double or triple the price. And in some cases, there is that aspect of safety and legality that comes with being able to purchase through that route. But at the end of the day, people are going to do what they're going to do. And all we ask is that they're safe and responsible, so that they're not consuming products that they don't know what's in them or where the source of origin comes from.
Yeah, and then with that goes like all those vapes, the vape scare, all those dank carts and the things that are being made in people's basements and being sold out in the streets, or simply product that doesn't meet the requirements to make it into the dispensary, and then are sold on the black market, which seems to be more happening out in the West Coast, making its way here, to the Midwest. So that's, we advocate for healthy, responsible use. And if you have the means to go to the dispensary and get your medical card, we highly, encourage it for the health and safety of everybody.
I have to agree with that. I think that we have to also remember, though, that we were once those people.
It wasn't
before 2013, I was that person. I was going to the dark alley. I was getting what I needed to get for Jim. And if the dispensaries had shut down during this COVID, I'm not going to sit here and tell you I wouldn't have done it again. I suggest not to. We don't have a fund for bailing anyone out, but you do what you got to do, and don't tell me about it.
Thanks for pointing out that everything that we have is because people were doing this illegally. They had to do it to maintain some type of health in order to function, and then they had to face the threat of being arrested and prosecuted. So the reason why the black market still exists is because it is needed. We're not going to be able to completely flip this thing with all the taxes and fees and prohibitions that still exist. We used to fingerprint people. I mean, what a wonderful way to prevent people from participating in a medical program. Fingerprint everybody. So we're moving forward. But, to the guy or the person who posed the question, we understand completely.
Here's another question that we received recently. The question is, will we ever see a push to make edibles stronger than 100 milligrams for patients in Illinois? I think that's a good question. To provide some context on that, we had a lot of trouble getting certain products into the Illinois market because of that reason. In fact, one of the products that we initially tried to bring into the Illinois market was a cannabis nasal spray that was shown to help patients with epilepsy and symptoms of seizures to essentially stop the grand mal seizures within a 20 or 30-second period. However, the size of the container ultimately contained more than the 100 milligrams that were available legally for that type of product, and it created many issues where it ended up delaying the launch of that product in the state of Illinois by about 2 years. And so whether that's going to change, I personally don't know, but I think that there would be a benefit to doing so, because the current limit of the THC milligrams in edibles prevents people who need very high doses of it without wanting to consume not only the calories, but the amount of sugar that some of these edibles sometimes contain, which oftentimes then patients have to resort to trying to figure out how to make their own and find recipes online and trying not to ruin their batches of butter or oil that they're trying to produce on their own. And so I think that there's a lot of opportunity for education on the consumer side for how to make better use of their products to make them equally strong, if not stronger than the dispensary products, so that it could fit according to what those consumers or patients are looking for.
Yeah, and that's where the education, is important, because the people that are in charge of making these changes don't know these things. So that's why it's important to get involved in local government. For anybody who's curious, we were discussing Illinois at that point in time. Illinois has a limit on edibles to only be 100 milligrams, and that's not strong enough for a lot of people. And process properly and absorb all the cannabinoids that they need from an edible, which is why edibles aren't always, a viable option for many. And if you're in Illinois and you want to make your own edibles, that's where we would suggest, or I would suggest, is using an RSO oil from the dispensaries, because and it's not true RSO. It's extracted with CO2, and it's already activated, the THC. So it's as simple as heating up your butter and just squirting the syringe right into the butter and mixing it thoroughly, and then bam. No need to worry about figuring out if you need, an eighth or a half ounce or whatever, and being afraid of messing up your brownie batch. In Illinois, it's made it really easy, just using your RSO oils, and that gives you 1,000 milligrams per syringe, as opposed to 100 milligram edible, and the savings is astronomical. I mean, RSO syringes are between $70 and $90 for a gram, 1,000 milligrams, where an edible is going to cost you on sale, $30, $40 after taxes. So, yeah.
Hey, Rui, you seem like a very knowledgeable individual. Would you recommend a at-home device for infusing your own oils and stuff like that to help regulate consistency, instead of just like, the standard, saucepan or crock pot,
Yeah, I mean, there's a few like coffee pot looking things. One of them would be like the Magic Butter machine, which is the one that I utilize, and then they have another one that's got like the Moda pot. There's a handful of ones. I love the Magic Butter machine. That was a huge game changer, because then I just throw my bud in there and I set the timer, and then
what?
It ends it for me, because that's what's the trouble when you're making it at home, is you have to consistently be stirring your material so that you don't ruin your batch.
Yeah.
I spent many hours stirring in front of the oven. Yeah. Well, I mean, you'll be able to have a class and teach us some things, Penelope. But otherwise, there's a device out there called the Ardent, and that's been another one.
How about the Levo?
Export it, but this probably would be the time to do that, because in that case you can also skip and just use your concentrates, like your shatter, your butters, to cook with, and that should make it a lot easier too, again, rather than working with flour. So those are my two at-home recommendations, would be the Magic Butter Machine and the Ardent. Definitely would check those out. It's an investment. It's always an investment in your health. They're not cheap. I'm one to buy any device that comes out, and when I try to go at a very affordable price, I end up kicking myself because I end up spending the money again on something else. So definitely, check out the reviews, and those would be my two best recommendations.
Have you heard of the Levo?
Yes, I have heard of the Levo. Yeah, I haven't seen it in action. Some of our community members have that, and they've been very happy. Yeah, you got it?
I made some oil, maybe or maybe not, last night. I did.
Before you guys make me hungry, I'm going to switch topics and gears a little bit. First, I want to say hi to Sue, Jen, Mark, Mitzi, Barno, and Matt, who've joined us, and Kathy. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us. Segueing into one of the other questions that I personally had, you guys had mentioned about getting involved in advocacy to basically help change some of these laws. What are your recommendations for people to get in advocacy? How do you go about it at the legislative level? Who do you contact? Where do you start? And what are the basics for somebody sitting at home who wants to become an advocate but has no idea what the first step is? I think either Sandy, Jordan, Andrew, Penelope, and Kirsten, this might be totally your lane.
Okay, so for me, 10 years ago in 2009 was the first time I ever got really involved. I heard of medical cannabis was going to be passed in Illinois, and Jim was on like 59 pills a day, and I said, you know what, something's got to give here. So we started calling. At the time, the representative's no longer there, and we drove his secretary crazy. And finally, we went down in 2010. Jim and I, just the two of us, showed up and we went to my state rep first, and he was an absolute no. And Jim sat there and talked to him until he had him in tears. And we knew then that we were never going to leave this place until we got that passed, because we had I don't know if you guys are familiar with Julie Falco. I know those of us in Illinois are. She originally had gone to my state rep, and he literally yelled at her and sent her out of the office. He had a really big reefer madness concept of everything, and very old-fashioned, older. And so our plan was to convince everyone. So Jim, being a disabled veteran, kind of helped, I'm not gonna lie. Being in the wheelchair helped. The sicker you were, the more convincing you were. And that was what was the hardest part for us, was getting the sick people down to the Capitol. So my advice is you call your state rep, make an appointment with them, get into their office. It's better to try at the Capitol, but if you can't get into their office at the Capitol, see them in their office locally, and then go stand by the rails, by the doors where they come in and out, and send your business card in there with their name on it. And they have to come out to see you and put a face to yourself. There's nothing better than a face. I mean, we can call all day, we can send emails all day, but a face makes a difference. And after 10 years there, I happen to know a lot of people down in Illinois, and there's a lot of newbies I don't know. Jordan probably knows more of the newbies than I do this year. But yeah, you just got to keep going. And while we're on the topic, can we have Jordan do a legislative update?
I mean, there's not a whole lot to update on. We don't have any official news like New York does, but with there being less than 50 days in the legislative session, there's probably not a whole lot that's going to happen with COVID. All legislators are dealing with stuff in their own districts related to this virus. Chicago Normal is still working on bills and stuff. It's my guess is it's stuff that's gonna be built up and ultimately voted on next year. But yeah, I mean, we have a lot of bills that were that are up, that would, some positive bills. It's just a matter of when legislators are actually going to be able to get together, discuss them, vote on them, which in my opinion is not going to be until next year.
Are we expecting
Hey,
75 new dispensary licenses on May 1st?
The regulation part of it, I am very out of the loop of, so I could not speak to that at all.
My understanding is some of the licenses are still going through. According to our governor, they're looking at ways to hold session. I mean, if this gets over soon, I mean, they do go back for veto session in November, which there is no veto session this year. So it's possible they could flip that around and make that a session. We just don't know how they're going to do it. I think that, in my personal opinion, would be the best route rather than let everything wait, but I'm not the governor.
And doing these things is no joke. It's no joke. Jordan dragged me down. Didn't drag me down, but went down to the Capitol and got to experience running around trying to schedule and just make time to be heard. Because and don't be an ass. Don't be an ass. Because the more of an asshole you are and raise your volume, just like anything, they're not going to want to hear you as much sense as you're trying to get through their head. It's about having a conversation and just explaining it to them, because there's so many other things going on. You just have to make yourself heard and be compassionate and just understanding. It's very frustrating for all of us, but they're human beings. We're all human beings.
Yep.
It's what I'm learning is that I'm having a hard day. That person's probably having a hard day too. So yeah.
I think it took us, how many years did it take us? I know many bills before I even started down there were in Springfield. So I think we spent half of our life literally living in Springfield from 2010 to 2013 to get a bill passed. I think our bill went up twice a year maybe that time. It was crazy. Don't give up.
Yep, and these are things that we all are doing on our free time, and to do these things, it's not simple, because doing all that in the middle.
Maryland, it helped me to get involved. Common Cause, and their information was a great start. But I mean, I got involved later in the game and before everything passed, when there were delays, and went down and testified with Raina. And then this year we got the school bill passed. So next year this one can ride the bus with access to her meds and be able to go to school, and I can pick up the other two from school with her in the car and with the meds in the car. But it was really just, I went straight to my senator. He was like, oh yeah, that's a good idea. I have a lot of sympathy for you, but I'm not brave enough to do anything. So he sent me on to other people, and then we ended up coming together. At the end, there were two separate bills through Maryland, but the other one didn't really cover what Raina needed. So thankfully they ended up passing everything. But I don't know, that's what happened for us, and that's how I got involved. And it was schlepping down there. And the first time that I took Raina and Paisley down, I guess Paisley was in kindergarten, so that was 2018? No, 16. She was born in 15. Started cannabis in 2016. It was 2017 when we had first gone down. And the reason I took both the girls then was because they're going to vote for it for kids. and mine were portable at the time, so I was happy to be able to take them and speak up and let them know what we needed. Now in Maryland, we need to fight for employee rights next, and home grow, obviously. And regarding our situation here, as far as our medical supply, I recently found the THCA whatever isolate, and I'd never used an isolate with Raina before. We had been doing the RSO, and we started the THCA isolate on top of the RSO in February 20th. We had a big uptick in seizures, and we've had control since then, and we're relearning skills, but that's the crappy part about epilepsy. Sometimes they forget. And then my oldest that had the stroke, it's great to be off school right now because we're experimenting, and I'm trying to tweak and figure out where her dosage should be. The psoriasis is clearing up, so we're very happy about that. And we're just working with topicals for spasticity and pain management and trying to work that out. But I don't know. Sorry, I went on beyond.
Oh, that's
I loved it. You're
So,
really pointing
I'd be
out
happy to
something
answer any
important.
questions. I don't know much. All I know is what's worked for my girls and the changes that we've been able to see in them, and that's all I can really attest to. I can't.
I would give yourself more credit that you
Absolutely.
have a
Well,
law.
if anybody knows how to make, what I was trying to do before was make THCA for Raina, and we're going to start the CBG. I'm going to start a CBG isolate with her now and add that in. Probably end up going with Flower Child. But my oldest just likes to eat flower. I mean, she asks if she can. I was trying to extract it and keep it as an A just by putting it in the windowsill in some fractionated coconut oil. I don't know what the heck I'm doing.
What type of epilepsy does your daughter have? Grand mal seizures, petit mal, both?
The one on the floor right here, this one is the one that gets the RSO and the THCA. She has tonic-clonic seizures. She has a genetic diagnosis of EEIE type 47, blah, blah, blah. She's one of like 5 in the world. Doesn't have a good outcome and outlook, but they haven't studied kids that have been on cannabis, and they don't know my baby. So
exactly.
poo-poo to them. But I'd really like to, she's got some vowel and consonant combinations. I'd love to see an uptick in speech and communication. I mean, she'll be 5 in September. So we are, I'd love her to be able to speak a little bit more. And that's why I was going to add the CBG, because I had heard good things about that, but always looking to learn and try and figure it out. And then the oldest one, I don't know if I'm just wasting money allowing her to eat flour. She is a stroke survivor. So her diagnosis is cerebral palsy. And we're just, but then she only agreed to treat her psoriasis with it.
Well,
but whatever, you gotta go with what a 9-year-old's gonna go with sometimes.
Thank you so much, first of all, for being a caregiver. That's the hardest part, possibly. Someone with epilepsy, personally, the cannabis, I feel like it saved my life multiple times, especially in my educational career. And, I really have positive hope for its medical aspects, especially for children with epilepsy. And thank you again for being a caregiver. That is a unsung position that we don't ask for. But personally, with my epilepsy, I couldn't have been the strong person I am today without my caregiver group supporting me.
And I think we've got a couple caregivers here on this chat, right? Between Rue and Sandy and Penelope, and it seems like Andrew as well, and Carrie. There's a room full of caregivers and an unspoken conversation on the difficulties of what it's like to actually manage the duties of being a caregiver on a daily basis. And I don't think you guys get enough credit for everything that you're putting into. So definitely thank you for picking up the torch for those who can't.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Segueing into our, go ahead.
I just want to say one thing. CBS was looking for caregiver stories. So if any of you from Illinois can do a video and send it to Wendy, I believe, Wendy Wyndham. She's looking for caregiver. I sent mine in. It was supposed to be aired this week, but I'm not sure if they even got to it, because I don't know if they got enough videos. So if you guys don't mind, it would be nice to send that in, and they want to know what it's like to be a caregiver during this time.
As we segue into our next conversation, one of the things that we mentioned was methods of consumption. Whether we're speaking about children, the elderly, standard consumers, or people who don't like smoking, I'm curious to learn more about what are some of the methods of consumption that you guys are using. Somebody in our chat mentioned that they were using smoothies. Carrie's daughter is using dry flower cannabis as consumption, and it looked like Kirsten got super excited about that and the potential benefits that are associated with consuming dry flower just as a natural form. So I'd be curious to hear more from Kirsten on what her thoughts are there.
Well, the first thing that popped into my head is that raw natural flower as it comes from the dispensary is filled with great cannabinoids and terpenes. And I feel like the less disturbed it is, the more you get out of it. So there's so much, I call THCA the humble hero, because it allows a person to get really active cannabinoids into their system without a psychoactive effect. And I've heard stories of someone just getting a nug put in their cheek, and even though it was not converted or decarboxylated into THC, it still gave great relief. So I feel like THCA and the flower in its raw form is super helpful. And I really think that if you you can follow a lot of recipes and just skip the heat. When we do edibles, we decarboxylate, we toast it in the oven for a little while. And if you skip that step, then the THCA remains as is in your final product, eliminating the psychoactive effect. And it's amazing how many people, okay, first of all, I do want to mention that Dr. Dustin Sulak presented at Cannabis Conference at Harvard, MedCan Conference, and he said, you know, we had this trouble, we had some success with CBD treating seizures, but then, you know, it just receded. And then we said, let's just start from scratch. And he said, let's start with 1 milligram of THCA. So it was done in a tincture form, meaning that they stripped the cannabinoid THCA off with a no heating, no decarb step. And the parents actually went conservatively and gave 0.3 milligrams as a dose to the child to treat the seizures. And they were like, we got complete seizure elimination with that low of a dose of THCA. So another thing that I wanted to address about you sharing your story and being a wonderful caregiver mom is that you're saying, I don't know what I'm doing and I'm kind of trying out different things. That is exactly how everybody does it. Look at the nods. I love it. Thank you so much.
That's how your doctor does it.
What?
That's how the doctors do it. They send you home with like, okay, we're going to start you off here and try it out and tell me how you feel. And come back and we'll either up the dosage or we'll lower it. I mean, she's doing the right thing.
There's an incredible wealth of knowledge and experience for broad experiences about effects of cannabinoids and what happened and worked for other people's kids. And that's wonderful to have that to cling to as sort of a guide. And it's frustrating, and yet it's liberating to know that when you go on this journey, you will be able to customize this medicine on a daily and hourly basis. And even though that you may find, let's say you found something in 3 weeks that was perfect, that child grows, their metabolism changes, and then their cannabinoid ratio and program will change. So it's an ever evolving medicinal protocol. And you guys are agreeing with me, right? That you're just always on the fly and making adaptations and trying to find, even if you find, oh, this particular strain works great, sometimes you get that strain burnout where you need to do a little bit of a switcheroo or a terpene refresh, we call it, in order to sort of reignite and engage with receptors in just a slightly different way, and it sort of reignites the symptom treatment that you were getting before.
Yeah, and that's what, you know, that's why we need to have proper labeling, have all these cannabinoids on there and terpenes on there, so it's easier to distinguish. I know in my journey for pain relief, you know, I was 25 and my back was going out, and you know, just sharp, terrible pains, and I had discovered dabbing, and then, you know, found out that dabbing is really just a term of how you're consuming, and then learned that traded so stronger than your flower, so less is more. And I was going through a gram a day and not finding any pain relief, and it's just like, okay, well, I'm high as a kite, but I'm not getting the relief that I'm looking for. I'm still pinned to the bed, to the couch, and that's when I learned about live resin, you know, and I tried live resin, and then that gave me the relief that I was looking for without being high, with just a small little puff, and you know, and then I learned what the difference was, is that the live resin just has a fuller cannabinoid profile and terpenes in it because of the extraction process. And for those that aren't aware, you know, when you're producing concentrates or dabs, it's you grow the plant, you chop it, then you use a solution to extract the oil from it, whether it be CO2 or not. And then you're left with the consumable oil at the end after you let the solution evaporate and you clean it. With live resin, you know, you grow it, you chop it, and rather than drying it, curing it, which makes the THC more prominent, you know, you flash freeze it, and that preserves all the other cannabinoids that you would have lost during the curing process. So, so education is key about learning on all the products that are available to you. Yeah.
I'm so glad you brought that up, Kristen, about it's just the raw plant is your THCA. It's before it's, you know, the chemical change goes in there to change the acid form, you know, that fancy word, that decarboxylation. I mean, I've got jars of THCA and CBDA sitting on my counter, you know, from just using an alcohol base to extract. So and this plant is so adaptable, and there's so many variances. I mean, and that's the frustrating part. We see in our community, a lot of you write in and, you know, what can I take? What will help blank? You know, you want to know what exactly you should use, which strain, which dose. And, you know, it's frustrating that we can't give you that answer either. But, you know, wonderful moms, you know, like the one who was on today, sharing what she has tried and what has worked for her kids. And that's a starting point for any of us. And like Kristen said, it may change, and I guarantee it will. You know, for me, everything has changed. For the first year, I never did anything other than edibles, never smoked in my entire life. And now I find my body's changed, and there's different ways that I have to find to help with the pain. And, you know, for a lot of us, and I looked back at the chat quick, and I saw that I know who Don was, who had asked the question from Alaska, and he knows very well, and it said that he had a question for Penny. So that would be me. Yeah, we do what we have to do in other states. I do not have a dispensary like Illinois. We do not have choices. We cannot walk in and know a terpene profile. We can't buy cannabinoids by the label. We cannot have a choice, and we cannot grow, and there are no options. And it's very frustrating for our lawmakers because they don't understand. They want a Tylenol to be 500 milligrams for everyone, and for it to basically do the same for everyone. And that's their struggle on legalizing and expanding the medical program. Even they want it to look like a pharmaceutical because doctors know how to deal with that. And they know if something's isolated, they can predict and know exactly what it is. And this is a plant, it's a natural herb. And that's so frustrating for so many for the industry, because they want to standardize it, but it is a plant. And so a lot of us who've come to love the plant understand that now. Our bodies are all different. Our endocannabinoid systems are all going to be different. And so, you know, as much as we want it standardized and make it all safe, we do have to give that leeway to understand it is a plant. Our bodies will react different, and it's going to, everywhere you grow it, it's going to be different too. And in that, you know, and genetics. So, but
it might be a little bit of a subject jump, but we've seen a lot of legislation talking about, is cannabis essential? And we think we've flown into that essential area because we have medical programs. And I just want to point out that from the agricultural perspective, you don't just shut down a cannabis grow. It's like the dairy industry. You can't go to a cow and be like, hey, press pause, we don't want your milk for now. It's like on or off, and that's all you get. So in order to have an industry left to serve anyone, they have got to keep their grows and their cultivation centers up and running. Their only other option is to throw it away, continue to grow it, and not be able to sell it if they shut down. So, I mean, it's just impossible to expect cultivation centers to just quit producing. And so it goes a lot deeper than just, is it essential or is it not?
And with the essential service and the way that you can manipulate cannabis, it sounds like people are able to consume it via topicals, by smoking, vaporizing, through edibles, patches, suppositories, RSOs, tablets, beverages, intranasal deliveries, salves and lotions, and even raw. So there's so many different ways to be able to consume cannabis for everybody, that if one method of consumption doesn't work for you, there's something else available that you might be more comfortable with consuming.
What I found from kids, if I can share, I don't have to. What I found for my kids is they both need a full spectrum product. When I've tried just an isolate, particularly with Paisley, the older one that had the stroke, when I've tried just an isolate without anything else, I'm not seeing as profound as effects, and I'm not seeing I guess holistic effects. There's always the target things that I'm looking out for, but then there's always the bonus side effects that I don't expect to see. And that's just what I've found in our case, and in my children. It's important that they have a full spectrum product, but then now I'm learning to trinkle in the isolates. And for Paisley's consumption, she also does, when she consumes the raw flower, she's taking it and basically putting sprinkles on top of things. So she's just grinding it up and sprinkling it on cereal or whatever it is that she's having. This morning she had it on French toast. But it does make it hard to figure out how much she is getting. But I don't know. And that my son can't have the sprinkles. He gets frustrated.
I've seen a lot of people.
And he was so funny at breakfast today. He was just like, I just don't understand why we can't just go out in the yard and grow our own cannabis and just go pick the cannabis. So you didn't have to go to the dispensary and buy it from the dispensary, Mom. It just makes so much more sense. It's just a plant. So he's 7. So they have a pretty unique perspective. And then they watched the testimony when we were in Annapolis this year, and their only question was like, Mom, what is marijuana? I don't know what marijuana, they just had never heard the terminology before. I've always called it cannabis with them, and they know it's cannabis, and cannabis is medicine. So they were very confused when all these legislators were talking about marijuana, and just thought I'd share that. It was kind of funny.
I just want to add too, for any of the members that are watching with us, I found an easy cookbook. It's backwards. It's Easy Cannabis Cookbook. And I see Mark, who's in our chat, was talking about making salads. There's a whole section of salads. So Easy Cannabis Cookbook by Sherry Sicard. I get no money for that. I'm just telling you, it's a very easy book.
Mine's Small Bites for the Modern Cannabis Kitchen by Stephanie Hua. And there's actually a nice ratio breakdown in the middle of using oils to getting a nice milligram breakdown, because I know that for a lot of people, you're making your own home infusion. Big question is, milligram dosage. I want consistency. And that's very important, is to know that ratio. I think.
Wonderful. So changing gears into our last topic of conversation for the day. It is 420 the entire month this year, and we're all stuck inside with the government telling us to stay inside and sending us money to do so, which sounds like a lot of people are going to use those funds for potentially cannabis. So if you would have told us that in any other world, the government would be paying us to stay home and watch Netflix and consume cannabis to save the world, I don't know if I would have believed you, but I'm taking advantage of the opportunity, and I'm curious to hear what are the plans that everybody else in the community has. Looks like Penelope has no plans, neither does Sandy.
We don't have any plans, but I was thinking we should do a live on 420 and have all of our members join in like this. It would just be interesting to see all the little faces in my screen. So we should definitely do this again and have a big party.
Chicago Normal is doing a virtual event on 420. There's going to be a bunch of guest speakers and stuff like that.
We were supposed to for Western New York Normal too, but we have quite a few essential workers on our board, and the way things have gone with that, and it's getting exhausting. So I don't know if we'll be able to. So
Abraham, I did not see Leslie's comment. You said Leslie made a comment regarding inhalants. I didn't see that.
Yes, she said the great options were discussed, and that she recommends avoiding inhaling in any form or method during the pandemic, simply because it's been a crazy time and it's not worth the risk to literally lose your life over this. And she's speaking from experience, being on the front line, where she has seen over 28 people who have already passed at the Glenbrook Hospital alone, where she works at. And so having those insights from a medical professional who's on the front lines is absolutely helpful to provide us context with what they're seeing on the front lines, so that we can understand how this could potentially affect us, and realize that with smoking cannabis, it simply creates an additional risk for people who are already immunocompromised, or who have issues like asthma or COPD or any type of other struggle breathing, because as most people know, when you consume cannabis via inhalation, there's the potential that you're naturally going to cough, and that is not always the best feeling to feel for a person, especially for one who already experiences difficulties with their lungs.
So for those who are not sure who Leslie is, she's Dr. Leslie Mendota Temple, and she's from North Shore. And she was the head chair on the medical advisory board here in Illinois. And she has her own business up near North Shore. I think she's a director in North Shore. I'm not 100% sure what her exactly, but she's big up there, okay? So she knows what she's talking about. She also writes cannabis certifications, and was very helpful in getting us the telehealth option while we're under this virus. So yeah. Way to go, Leslie.
And so this is where we have to fight to try to change the laws so that things can happen federally, and then so that patients have help paying for this medicine that saves their lives, and as opposed to just paying for the pharmaceuticals, in which they also have their place and time as well. But like my patient is a COPD patient, and she'll have 500 milligrams in a sitting, and from the RSO syringes, and experiencing no relief, from that. And and that just gets costly, you know. And unfortunately, then when her COPD is bad enough, you know, the herbal vaporizer, or even we tried a Lodo, which is a new dabbing device out there, and sometimes, you know, she can't do that. So that's, yeah, it's rough. So
Leslie just chimed in and said she was the family med and integrative medicine certified 460 people so far in the state of Illinois. Yeah, she's also on the front lines for this COVID. Her and her husband are risking their lives every day for us. So thanks, Leslie.
Thank you, Leslie. Thank you.
thank you, thank you.
I think a very important thing is that, you know, we are patients primarily, a lot of us, and medically, you know, and a big concern, at least here in New York, is that once recreational comes, the medical program that is already quite horrible will be forgotten about. And it's our job to make sure that that focus continues in the next, you know, at least for New York, the next year, because of the budget. You know, we need to focus on that and the medical patients.
Hey, we haven't heard a lot from Andrea. Andrea, you still with us?
Nikki too.
If your microphone works, I really want you to just give us a summary of your transition, because I remember working with you at Florimedics when you applied to the program.
Yes.
And you started off, you know, with just something simple, and now you're like, oh, I make this and I make that, and this is what I do to manage. And I just feel like you took the bull by the horns. You were like unstoppable. So I feel like
I did.
You've become such an expert. So I'd love to hear what you had to say about your transition. That's really important.
I started out with you at Florimedics, and you taught me a lot when I first started going there. And then I decided to go somewhere closer to me, and needed to save money, and I taught myself a lot. And now I'm in school, and I'm studying on my own. This is nothing new to me, needing to be isolated because of my disease. I've been isolated a lot in my life. So this has actually been great for me. I'm not only in school, but I'm studying on my own. And right now I'm really concentrating on CBG. And I've contacted some professors in Israel where they do a lot of studies on cannabis. That's where they're doing most of it. So I've been having a lot of difficulty because of the language issues, but I have translators and I speak a little bit of Hebrew. So I'm really concentrating on CBG on my own, but I'm at Oakton studying cannabis now. And I make all of my own medicine. I buy everything that I need at the dispensary. You know, I buy my flour and my RSO, but I'm making suppositories, I make capsules, I make all my oils. I take it, I make it.
You're saying you're concentrating on CBG, but are you doing ratios of CBG with THC, or THC only for night and CBG during the day?
I'm doing it separately, but I've been thinking about combining it. But I have my jar of CBG oil, and then I have my capsules or my suppositories of THC. But I've been thinking, you know, why am I doing this separately? I should just combine it. But I don't always, I don't like the psychoactive effects. So I've been trying to use more CBD, and because I get infections very easily. I'm a person who gets pneumonia every month. So I've been really working with CBG, trying to see whether that helps prevent that from happening, which is one reason that I think I've been doing that on its own, because I want to see how that affects me.
Smart.
And then after a couple of after a couple of months, I will combine that. But I'm testing it on myself, and then I'm keeping notes. Maybe I'll write a paper and see whether somebody can get some information from me.
And how do
something.
you quantify your success when you came in as a new patient and how you felt and what you were struggling with? How do you feel now?
Completely different person than I was 14 months ago when I first saw you. You know, in the 70s when I was young, you know, I used to smoke pot to get high. I don't like the psychoactive effects now. I started young and I stopped young, and then I started to use it for medical reasons. And now, you know, I think I'm fairly knowledgeable now. When I first met you, I didn't know much of anything. And you and I sat down and we talked, and I was so fortunate. I've heard so many stories from people who first got their cards and they went into dispensaries and they spoke to somebody and they didn't feel that they were given much of an education. But we sat down and we talked for a while, and
I can tell the difference in you, almost just like you're lit up on the inside now.
Oh yeah, it's completely different, you know. And I live with my mother, who's just turned 93, and I've had to educate her as well, because she comes from a place where, you know, it was marijuana, you know, and that's bad. And I've had to educate her about cannabis and completely turn her head around. And she complains about the smell sometimes when I'm cooking, and but she knows different now, and that's been very enlightening and exciting to see her head change as well.
You're sufficiently bit by the cannabis bug, I can tell.
Oh yeah, yeah. I have a cousin who is a caterer, and I am talking to her as well, and said, you know, if you ever want to spread your wings, and she said to me, we've actually started looking into that to see whether we can get licensed to do something like that, but she's concerned about insurance and how it will affect her liquor license. But they've already started looking into it, but I was actually hoping it would help me get a job. But you know, it's opened up the world for a lot of people in many, many ways. But for me, in terms of my health, it's opened up things a lot. I've been able to do a lot more than I was able to do before because I'm in less pain. But I've gone back to school because of it. I haven't been in school in 35 years. And boy, school's a lot different than it was then. But I'm using my brain again in different ways. And I've always been a researcher. I've always found topics that interest me, and then I will for months study, and I'm up late studying, but now I'm studying something different. And it's fascinating. And I'm meeting people in different countries studying this, and that makes it more interesting for me as well. And then I'm educating people about it.
It kind of automatically makes you an advocate.
Yes, absolutely.
Now that you've done all that work, you feel like, hey, why should I be the only one who knows this and have to go from scratch again?
Right. And you helped me when I was going to Scotland. I was able to go to Scotland.
That's what I remember, all those gummies. I'm tired of gummies.
I can't stand them anymore. I don't do gummies.
Okay, we're going to take one last question, and it is from Leslie. She wants to know the feeling that we have, or the opinion about rectal vaginal suppositories. I know we were just talking about that, so.
2 thumbs up. I haven't done either, But because I know they work and people have recommended them, I'm like,
in my experience working inside of the, oh, I'm sorry. Sorry, it was cutting out. And but inside of the dispensary, it's a conversation that comes up quite often, and it's a lot of success stories with that. I have not been in enough pain to try it out, but it's been very successful for a lot of people. So if you need relief, I recommend it.
2 thumbs up. I make them, I use them. They're great for lower back pain. And they also help my knees, which I hadn't thought of, but when I started using them, but they help my knees. And I have heard from people with endometriosis that vaginal suppositories work, have been very helpful for that as well.
Very cool. Thanks so much for contributing experience. That's one of the areas that I lack experience in, but it was one of the methods of consumption that we brought up. So it's fascinating to see the effectiveness of those types of methods of consumption. As I look at the clock, I realize we're at 2:52. We're coming up on 2 hours. So I imagine everybody might have Easter plans or other things to get on with their day. So unless we have any other questions, I just wanted to take a quick moment to thank all of you for joining us on the call and participating and being a part of the experience. Super excited that we were able to get a couple members from the community to also join us in the conversation and to also have questions fielded from members of our community. This is obviously our first trial run at starting to coordinate these types of video calls, and we look forward to doing more of them. So I had a lot of fun putting it together. There was a lot of learning experiences that we were able to gather from just this event, and I'm super excited to start putting together another one where we could potentially bring in some additional experts in cannabis, whether it's other doctors or medical professionals who could speak to this so that we could continue driving that conversation forward.
It was fun. It was nice to feel like a person and see everybody. So see you on the other side.
virtual hugs to everybody.
Social
Stay
distance
safe,
hug.
everyone.
Yep.
Thanks for letting me join you.
I hope you all enjoy your weekend. Thank you so much for being a part of this experience with us. I look forward to participating in another one soon.
And give us your feedback.
And bingo. Get the feedback for future discussions. We want your questions.
Yeah, tell us what you want to hear about. We'll do interviews with people who are experts on whatever you want to learn.
Let's do that.
Wonderful. Well, thank you guys so much. I appreciate you making
safe,
the time.
everybody.
I look forward to seeing you again.
Bye.
See you guys later.